Welcome to Long Stories to Sleep To. I'm your host, and tonight we're diving deep into the complex and layered world of Battlefield 6, exploring every detail of its narrative in our signature relaxed, conversational style. For those of you who find comfort in detailed explanations of game lore, this comprehensive exploration of Battlefield 6's story is designed specifically for you. We'll be examining the conflict between NATO and the mysterious Pax Armata, the soldiers caught in this global confrontation, and the shocking conspiracy that threatens to unravel the world order itself. So get comfortable, relax, and let your mind visualize the battlefields as we explore one of the most intriguing military science fiction stories in recent gaming history. Before we begin our deep dive, I want to assure you that we will be covering every aspect of Battlefield 6's narrative in extensive detail. Our journey will span the entire chronology of events, from the initial confrontation in Georgia through the various global flashpoints to the final revelations in Tajikistan and beyond. We'll examine the characters who populate this world, the technology that defines its warfare, the political underpinnings that drive the conflict, and the moral complexities that emerge when the lines between friend and foe become blurred beyond recognition. By the time we conclude, you will have a complete understanding of Battlefield 6's lore, perfect for both newcomers seeking comprehension and seasoned players looking to appreciate the subtleties they might have missed during gameplay. Section 1: The Gathering Storm Introduction to the World of Battlefield 6. To truly understand the events of Battlefield 6, we must first establish the geopolitical landscape that sets the stage for the conflict. The year is 2027, and the world exists in a state of tense equilibrium. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, commonly known as NATO, remains the predominant military alliance despite facing internal divisions and questions about its relevance in a world where traditional nation-state conflicts have given way to new forms of warfare. The rise of powerful private military corporations has transformed the nature of global conflict. With these well-funded, politically connected organizations increasingly taking on roles once reserved for national armies. These corporations offer plausible deniability to governments while pursuing objectives that would be diplomatically untenable if conducted openly by nation-states. This shifting landscape creates the perfect conditions for the crisis that is about to unfold. Central antagonistic force in Battlefield 6 is Pax Armata, a private military corporation whose name translates from Latin as armed peace, an intentionally ironic name that reflects the organization's philosophy that true peace can only be achieved through overwhelming military dominance. Pax Armata distinguishes itself from other PMCs through its unprecedented scale, sophisticated equipment, and global reach that rivals many national armies. Under the visible leadership of Alexander Kincaid, a former British SAS operative with a shadowy past and personal grudges, Pax Armata has rapidly expanded its influence across multiple continents. What makes Pax Armata particularly dangerous is its ability to exploit geopolitical fractures, offering its services to nations dissatisfied with the existing world order while simultaneously undermining the institutions that maintain that order. Philosophical underpinnings of Pax Armata bear examination, as they inform the organization's actions throughout the narrative. Pax Armata operates on an ideology that might be described as neo-Darwinian realpolitik, the belief that the current international system, with its diplomatic protocols, multilateral institutions, and rules of engagement, creates weakness rather than stability. In their view, the world has become stagnant under NATO's leadership, with technological innovation slowing and political will decaying beneath layers of bureaucracy and compromise. Pax Armata presents itself as the necessary corrective to this decay, a force that operates without political constraints, that rewards merit and effectiveness above all else, and that is willing to make the difficult decisions that democratic governments cannot. This philosophy proves appealing to numerous nations that feel constrained by international norms or marginalized by the existing power structure. Armata's military capabilities deserve particular attention, as they form a crucial element of the game's law. The organization fields equipment that is in many cases more advanced than what NATO deploys, including next-generation tanks, aircraft, and personal weaponry. Their soldiers represent a global recruitment effort, drawing special forces operators from around the world who have become disillusioned with their national militaries or simply attracted by the substantial financial compensation Pax Armata offers. The organization's command structure appears decentralized, with significant autonomy granted to field commanders, allowing for rapid adaptation to changing battlefield conditions. This stands in stark contrast to NATO's more hierarchical, methodical approach to command and control, setting up a classic conflict between order and agility that plays out across multiple engagements. This volatile situation steps our viewpoint characters, the members of Dagger 1 to 3, an elite team of U.S. Marine raiders who find themselves at the forefront of the emerging conflict. The squad is led initially by Master Sergeant Hayden, Has Carter, a seasoned veteran with decades of special operations experience, who maintains a calm, professional demeanor even under extreme pressure. His second-in-command is Gunnery Sergeant Dylan Murphy, the player's primary avatar throughout much of the campaign, a competent and dedicated Marine who grows into leadership as the story progresses. Staff Sergeant Simone Gecko Espina serves as the squad's sniper and reconnaissance specialist, bringing precision and patience to their operations. Completing the core team is Staff Sergeant Cliff Lopez, the squad medic who embodies the human cost of their missions, while working to mitigate that cost. Whenever possible, these characters exist within a broader support network that includes their CIA handler Melissa Mills, who provides intelligence and direction while maintaining an ambiguous relationship with the team that becomes increasingly significant as the story unfolds. Mills represents the bureaucratic and political dimensions of the conflict, often making decisions based on strategic considerations that conflict with the squad's immediate tactical needs or moral compass. Her role expands beyond simple mission control, eventually becoming central to the unraveling conspiracy that drives the narrative's climax. The interplay between Mills's calculated approach and the squad's ground-level perspective creates one of the story's central tensions. Exploring the disconnect between those who plan wars and those who fight them, the technological context of Battlefield 6's world also merits discussion, as certain advancements play crucial roles in the narrative. The most significant of these is Project Veils, a classified NATO technology capable of disabling satellite imagery over large areas, effectively creating zones where military movements can occur without observation. The strategic value of such technology cannot be overstated. In an era where satellite surveillance forms the foundation of intelligence gathering, the ability to operate unseen would provide an enormous advantage to whichever faction controlled it. Another significant technological element is NXC, an explosive nano-compound of unprecedented destructive power that becomes a central plot point as Pax Armata seeks to weaponize it. These technological MacGuffins serve not merely as plot devices, but as representations of the broader theme of control of information, control of destruction, and ultimately control of the global order itself. As our story begins in September 2027, the stage is set for a confrontation that will determine the future of global security. NATO forces in the country of Georgia are preparing to withdraw as part of a negotiated transfer of security responsibilities to Pax Armata, representing a significant moment in the legitimization of private military corporations as actors on the world stage. This transition is meant to be peaceful, a symbolic passing of the torch from the old world order to the new. But beneath the surface of this diplomatic facade, tensions simmer, agendas remain hidden, and the first moves in a much larger game are about to be made. The players have taken their positions, the weapons have been prepared, and the world stands on the brink of a conflict that will challenge every assumption about loyalty, duty, and the nature of modern warfare. Section 2. The Shadow Army deconstructing Pax Armata. Pax Armata stands as one of the most fascinating and complex antagonists in recent military fiction, precisely because it defies easy categorization. To understand the narrative of Battlefield 6 fully, we must look beyond the surface-level depiction of Pax Armata as simply the bad guys, and examine the organization's origins, structure, philosophy, and appeal. This shadow army represents more than just a collection of mercenaries. It embodies a fundamental challenge to the existing world order and raises troubling questions about the future of conflict in an increasingly privatized world. In this section, we will deconstruct Pax Armata from multiple angles, building a comprehensive picture of the organization that sets itself against NATO and ultimately threatens global stability. Origins of Pax Armata remain deliberately obscured throughout much of the narrative, with crucial details only emerging during the story's climax. What becomes clear early on, however, is that Pax Armata is no ordinary private military corporation. While typical PMCs operate as businesses, taking contracts for security, training, or limited combat operations, Pax Armata behaves more like a nation-state without borders, pursuing its own strategic objectives rather than simply fulfilling client requests. The organization's funding sources are exceptionally diverse and opaque, including legitimate business investments, shadowy backers with their own agendas, and potentially even state sponsors from among the nations that have withdrawn from NATO. This financial independence allows Pax Armata to operate with unusual autonomy, pursuing long-term goals rather than focusing on immediately profitable contracts. Leadership structure of Pax Armata centers initially around Alexander Kincaid, who serves as the public face and primary field commander of the organization. Kincaid's background proves essential to understanding both his motivations and Pax Armata's operational style. As a former SAS operative, Kincaid brings special forces expertise, counterinsurgency experience, and an intimate understanding of how Western military organizations think and operate. His history with Has Carter, which gradually emerges through the campaign, reveals a personal dimension to the conflict that transcends ideological differences. Kincaid embodies the betrayed soldier, the operative left behind by the system he served, who has now repurposed his skills to dismantle that system. His leadership style combines tactical brilliance with personal vindictiveness, creating a volatile but effective command presence. As the narrative progresses, we discover that Kincaid does not represent the ultimate authority within Pax Armata. The revelation that the CIA, through operative Melissa Mills, played a role in the organization's creation and development adds layers of complexity to our understanding of its command structure. Pax Armata appears to have been conceived as a controlled opposition force, a common enemy that would unite NATO members and justify continued American leadership of the alliance. This plan represents the cynical application of realpolitik at its most extreme, the intentional creation of a threat to maintain cohesion among allies. The fact that this manufactured threat then escapes its creator's control speaks to the inherent danger of such manipulative strategies in global affairs. Recruitment and composition of Pax Armata's fighting force reveal much about the organization's appeal and capabilities. Unlike national armies that draw primarily from a single country's population, Pax Armata recruits globally, focusing particularly on former Special Forces operators from numerous nations. These soldiers often bring years of combat experience and advanced training, making them exceptionally effective on the battlefield. Their motivations for joining vary widely. Some are disillusioned with their former militaries. Some are attracted by the substantial financial rewards. Some appreciate the reduced political constraints on their operations. And some genuinely believe in Pax Armata's philosophical challenge to the existing world order. This diversity of motivation creates a force united by capability rather than ideology, though a shared professional pride and contempt for conventional military structures serves as a bonding agent. Armata's equipment and resources deserve special attention, as they play a significant role in the narrative and reflect the organization's unusual capabilities. Throughout the campaign, Pax Armata fields weapons systems, vehicles, and technology that equal or occasionally surpass what NATO can deploy. This includes advanced main battle tanks, attack helicopters, fighter aircraft, and sophisticated personal equipment. The source of this advanced hardware remains ambiguous initially, though later revelations suggest multiple channels, including capture from NATO forces, procurement from sympathetic nations, and possibly even clandestine transfers from elements within NATO countries who support Pax Armata's objectives. This technological parity with established military powers underscores Pax Armata's status as something new and dangerous in the global security landscape. A non-state actor with state-level military capabilities. Political strategy employed by Pax Armata reveals a sophisticated understanding of modern geopolitical dynamics. Rather than attempting to conquer territory through brute force alone, Pax Armata operates through a combination of military pressure, political manipulation, and information warfare. The organization specifically targets nations that feel marginalized within the existing world order, offering an alternative to NATO membership that promises greater autonomy and security. The withdrawal of 12 nations from NATO following the Secretary General's assassination demonstrates the effectiveness of this strategy, as Pax Armata manages to fundamentally alter the balance of global power without defeating NATO in a direct military confrontation. This approach reflects a nuanced understanding that in the 21st century, political victories can be more consequential than battlefield successes. Armata's operational methodology combines conventional military tactics with irregular warfare approaches, creating a hybrid threat that proves difficult for NATO to counter effectively. The organization can execute large-scale combined arms operations featuring armor, artillery, and air support, much like a traditional army. Simultaneously, it employs sabotage, assassination, terrorism, and information operations more characteristic of insurgent or terrorist groups. This flexibility allows Pax Armata to adapt its approach based on the specific tactical and strategic context, making it an unpredictable and multifaceted opponent. The attack on the NATO base in Georgia represents conventional warfare, while the operation in Brooklyn demonstrates Pax Armata's capacity for complex asymmetric attacks designed to create psychological and political impact beyond their immediate destructive consequences. Philosophical underpinnings of Pax Armata warrant careful examination, as they provide intellectual justification for the organization's actions and appeal. At its core, Pax Armata represents a challenge to the liberal international order that has dominated global affairs since the end of World War II. The organization's rhetoric emphasizes efficiency over democracy, action over deliberation, and results over process. This message resonates particularly in nations frustrated with bureaucratic inertia, or who feel that the existing system serves only the interests of established powers. Pax Armata positions itself as a meritocratic alternative to what it portrays as a corrupt and decaying system, offering a vision of global security managed by professionals rather than politicians. This philosophy, while seductive in its simplicity, conveniently ignores the absence of accountability mechanisms in such a system, and the potential for abuse when military power is divorced from democratic control. As the narrative progresses, internal tensions within Pax Armata begin to surface, particularly regarding the organization's ultimate objectives and methods. The revelation that Kincaid was originally planted by Mills suggests that multiple factions may exist within Pax Armata, some aware of the organization's origins as a CIA project and others not. The relationship between Kincaid and his nominal superiors remains ambiguous, with suggestions that he may have exceeded his original mandate or been operating with agendas beyond those of his handlers. These internal divisions complicate our understanding of Pax Armata as a monolithic entity and raise questions about whether any single individual actually controls the organization by the time of the main events. Like many complex organizations, Pax Armata may have evolved beyond the intentions of its creators, developing its own momentum and objectives. Armata's relationship with the civilian populations in territories it controls represents another fascinating aspect of the organization's character. In Cairo, we see glimpses of how Pax Armata governs occupied territory, combining effective security with authoritarian control. Local populations appear to live under a mixture of fear and resignation, with the organization prioritizing operational security over hearts and minds. This approach contrasts with modern counterinsurgency doctrine that emphasizes winning popular support, suggesting that Pax Armata views civilian populations primarily as logistical and intelligence assets or liabilities, rather than as political constituents whose loyalty must be earned. This utilitarian approach to governance reflects the organization's fundamental nature as a military entity without the political responsibilities of a true government. In conclusion, Pax Armata emerges as far more than a simple antagonist for our protagonists to defeat. The organization represents a plausible vision of warfare's future, where non-state actors wield military power comparable to nations, where ideological motivations blend with financial incentives, and where the lines between friend and foe become almost impossible to discern. The complexity of Pax Armata as an organization mirrors the moral complexity of the world Battlefield 6 presents. A world where easy answers don't exist, where good intentions produce terrible consequences, and where the methods used to preserve security can ultimately undermine the very values that security is meant to protect. As we continue our exploration of Battlefield 6's law, we will see how the confrontation with this shadow army tests our protagonists not just militarily, but morally and psychologically, forcing them to question their most fundamental assumptions about duty, loyalty, and the nature of the system they have sworn to protect. Section 3. The soldiers' stories, profiling Dagger 1 to 3, and supporting characters. The human dimension of Battlefield 6's narrative unfolds primarily through the members of Dagger 1 to 3, the elite Marine Raider squad at the heart of the story. These characters represent more than just combat specialists. They embody different perspectives on military service, loyalty, and the personal costs of global conflict. In this section, we will explore each member of Dagger 1 to 3 in depth, examining their backgrounds, personalities, relationships, and developmental arcs throughout the narrative. We will also consider the crucial supporting characters who shape their journey, creating a comprehensive portrait of the human element within the larger geopolitical drama of the NATO Pax Armata conflict. Sergeant Dylan Murphy serves as the player's primary viewpoint character for much of the campaign, and his journey forms the emotional backbone of the narrative. When we first encounter Murphy during the attack on the NATO base in Georgia, he is a competent and dedicated Marine, but largely content to operate within the established chain of command, following orders without excessive questioning. The annihilation of his original squad, Tempest 1 to 2, during that initial attack traumatizes Murphy, leaving him with both survivor's guilt and a simmering anger toward Pax Armata. His reassignment to Dagger 1 to 3 places him in a new unit with established dynamics, requiring him to adapt while processing his recent losses. Murphy's relationship with Master Sergeant Has Carter evolves from one of professional respect to genuine mentorship, making Carter's death at the hands of Kincaid particularly devastating for Murphy's character development. Murphy's ascent to squad leadership following Carter's death represents one of the narrative's central arcs, tracing his transformation from a follower to a commander who must make difficult decisions with limited information. This transition is neither easy nor seamless. Murphy struggles with self-doubt and the weight of responsibility, particularly as he begins to suspect that the official narrative of the conflict may not align with reality. His leadership style differs from Carter's, leaning more on collaboration with his squadmates while maintaining the same fundamental commitment to completing the mission and protecting his team. Murphy's ultimate decision to execute Melissa Mills at the story's conclusion represents the culmination of his character development, an act that challenges military protocol and legal norms, but which he views as moral necessity in a situation where conventional justice seems impossible. This moment transforms Murphy from a soldier who follows orders to one who acts according to his own moral compass, regardless of the consequences. Sergeant Hayden has Carter begins the narrative as the composed, experienced leader of Dagger 1 to 3, a soldier with decades of special operations experience who maintains his professionalism even under extreme pressure. Carter embodies the ideal of the career non-commissioned officer, technically proficient, strategically astute, and deeply committed to the welfare of the soldiers under his command. His history with Alexander Kincaid adds personal dimension to the conflict, revealing itself gradually through the campaign. We learn that Carter and Kincaid served together in the SAS, and during a previous mission, Carter was forced to make the difficult decision to extract without Kincaid, leaving him behind in hostile territory. This incident haunts Carter, creating a mixture of guilt and responsibility that colors his interactions with his former comrade Carter's relationship. With Kincaid explores themes of brotherhood, betrayal, and the different paths soldiers can take after experiencing what they perceive as abandonment by their governments. Where Carter channeled his experience into renewed dedication to the institution, Kincaid's path led him toward rejecting that institution entirely. Their final confrontation in Georgia, which ends with Kincaid stabbing Carter to death, represents the tragic culmination of this long-simmering conflict between former brothers-in-arms. Carter's dying promotion of Murphy to squad leader serves as both a practical necessity and a symbolic passing of the torch, ensuring that the values Carter embodied duty, integrity, and loyalty to one's team will continue to guide Dagger 1 to 3 even after his death. Carter's absence hangs over the remainder of the narrative, with the squad frequently measuring their decisions against what their former leader would have done in their place. Staff Sergeant Simone Gecko Espina brings a specialized skill set to Dagger 1 to 3 as the squad's sniper and reconnaissance expert. Her callsign, Gecko, suggests an ability to operate in various environments with adaptability and precision, qualities essential to her role. As the sole female member of the core squad, Gecko avoids stereotypical characterization, instead emerging as a fully realized character defined by her professionalism, patience, and observational skills. Her role as sniper often places her at a distance from the rest of the squad, both physically and psychologically, giving her a unique perspective on their operations. Gecko frequently serves as the voice of caution and strategic thinking, considering long-term consequences that others might miss in the heat of immediate action. Gecko's background remains somewhat enigmatic throughout the narrative, with few concrete details about her life before the military. What becomes clear is her deep commitment to the squad and her particular loyalty to Carter, whom she clearly respects as both a leader and a person. Following Carter's death, Gecko forms a closer bond with Murphy, supporting his transition to leadership while helping maintain squad cohesion during a difficult period. Her observational skills extend beyond the tactical to the interpersonal, as she often notices tensions or concerns within the team that others miss. In the aftermath of Mills's revelation about the CIA's role in creating Pax Armata, Gecko becomes the character most focused on the broader implications, famously stating that the worst is still to come. A recognition that their actions have addressed symptoms rather than curing the underlying disease of institutional corruption and manipulation. Staff Sergeant Cliff Lopez serves as Dagger 1 to 3's medic, placing him in the crucial role of preserving life amid their destructive profession. Lopez embodies the paradox of the combat medic, trained as a healer but operating as a warrior when necessary. His presence in the squad constantly reminds both his teammates and the player of the human cost of warfare, as he works to mitigate that cost whenever possible. Lopez typically displays a more empathetic and emotional demeanor than other squad members, often giving voice to the moral discomfort that others suppress in the interest of mission focus. This doesn't make him any less effective as a soldier. Rather, it provides the squad with necessary moral ballast, ensuring that ethical considerations remain part of their decision-making process, even in extreme circumstances. Lopez's background as a medic shapes his perspective on the conflict in distinctive ways. Where other characters might measure success in objectives completed or enemies eliminated, Lopez gauges it in lives saved and injuries prevented. This alternative metric creates occasional tension with more offensively oriented squad members, particularly when tactical aggressiveness increases medical risk. Following the revelations about Mills and the CIA's involvement with Pax Armata, Lopez becomes particularly disillusioned, feeling that their sacrifices have been manipulated for purposes they didn't understand or consent to. His journey reflects the difficulty of maintaining humanitarian values in a context where those values are constantly being compromised by strategic necessities and institutional deception. Despite this disillusionment, Lopez remains committed to his role as healer, recognizing that whatever the larger political context, the soldier next to him still needs medical care when injured. Hemlock enters the narrative following Carter's death, joining Dagger 1 to 3 as a CIA operative attached to the squad for their final mission in Tajikistan. Hemlock represents a different type of operator than the Marine raiders, more comfortable with moral ambiguity, more willing to operate outside conventional rules of engagement, and more connected to the intelligence apparatus that has been manipulating the conflict from behind the scenes. His immediate execution of Kincaid during their confrontation, while justified as self-defense, suggests a desire to eliminate a loose end who possessed damaging information about the CIA's operations. Hemlock's role in persuading the squad to infiltrate Mills's home after the Tajikistan mission positions him as a catalyst for the story's final revelations, though his ultimate motivations remain somewhat ambiguous. Mills stands as one of the narrative's most complex characters, evolving from a typical mission control figure into the central antagonist of the piece. As the CIA handler for Dagger 1 to 3, Mills initially appears as a professional, if somewhat detached, intelligence operative, providing mission parameters and strategic context without emotional investment. As the story progresses, glimpses of a more manipulative and calculating personality emerge, particularly in her handling of operational details that don't align with the official narrative. The eventual revelation that Mills helped create and direct Pax Armata as a controlled opposition force to unite NATO represents the story's central twist, transforming our understanding of everything that has preceded it. Mills's justification for her actions presents a fascinating exploration of realpolitik thinking taken to its logical extreme. She argues that in the absence of a unifying threat like the Soviet Union, NATO was fragmenting, with member nations pursuing individual interests rather than collective security. By creating Pax Armata as a manageable common enemy, she and her collaborators within the intelligence community sought to preserve the alliance that has maintained relative global stability for decades. The fact that this plan spiraled out of control, with Kincaid exceeding his mandate and Pax Armata evolving beyond its creator's control, demonstrates the inherent danger of such manipulative approaches to international relations. Mills's ultimate fate, executed by Murphy at her own home, represents the narrative's moral judgment on her actions, suggesting that those who operate entirely in the realm of abstract strategy while ignoring human consequences ultimately create more chaos than they prevent. Richard Fernandez serves as the political face of the NATO response to the Pax Armata threat. Appearing initially during the Brooklyn summit, before becoming a direct participant in the narrative when his motorcade is attacked in Georgia. Fernandez embodies the challenges of democratic leadership in an era of asymmetric warfare, where conventional military superiority doesn't necessarily translate to strategic advantage. His declaration of a NATO global response force and formal war against Pax Armata following the attempt on his life represents a turning point in the conflict, moving from contained operations to full-scale military engagement. Fernandez's presence in the narrative grounds the geopolitical drama in a recognizable political context, reminding players that behind the military operations exist elected officials grappling with impossible decisions in an increasingly volatile world. Al-Khatib of Egyptian Unit 777 provides an important allied perspective beyond the American-centric view of the main characters. Al-Khatib appears during the Cairo mission, assisting Dagger 1 to 3 in their attempted extraction of Fayeq Selim, before returning to lead the Egyptian army's liberation of Cairo from Pax Armata control. His character represents the nations caught between the major powers and shadow organizations, forced to navigate complex loyalties while protecting their own national interests. Al-Khatib's professionalism and capability underscore the global nature of the conflict, rejecting simplistic narratives that frame the situation solely through Western perspectives. His cooperation with Dagger 1 to 3 demonstrates how local expertise and international special operations can complement each other in addressing global threats. In conclusion, the characters of Battlefield 6 give human dimension to what might otherwise remain an abstract geopolitical conflict. Through Dagger 1 to 3 and the figures surrounding them, the narrative explores themes of loyalty, moral compromise, leadership under pressure, and the personal costs of global conflicts. Each character embodies different responses to the same difficult circumstances, creating a rich tapestry of perspectives that prevents the story from descending into simplistic moralizing. The characters' journeys throughout the narrative transform them in ways they couldn't have anticipated when the conflict began, forcing them to question institutions they had trusted and to make decisions that would have been unthinkable under normal circumstances. It is through these characters that players experience the moral and emotional weight of Battlefield 6's story, ensuring that the human element remains central even as the scale of the conflict expands to global proportions. Section 4. The Spark, Georgia invasion and its aftermath, the invasion of the NATO base in Georgia, represents the inciting incident of Battlefield 6's narrative. The moment when simmering tensions explode into open warfare and established certainties crumble in the face of unexpected aggression. This section will examine the Georgia incident in exhaustive detail, analyzing the events themselves, their immediate consequences, and their far-reaching implications for the global order. The attack serves not merely as an action set piece, but as the foundation upon which the entire narrative is built, establishing themes, conflicts, and character dynamics that will resonate throughout the ensuing story. By understanding the Georgia invasion completely, we gain essential context for everything that follows in the escalating conflict between NATO and Pax Armata. The geopolitical context leading up to the Georgia incident merits careful examination. In September 2027, NATO forces in Georgia are preparing to withdraw as part of a negotiated transfer of security responsibilities to Pax Armata. This transition represents a significant moment in the legitimization of private military corporations as security actors, marking their acceptance as replacements for traditional military forces in certain contexts. The handover is intended to be peaceful and orderly, with NATO removing sensitive materials and equipment, while Pax Armata personnel observe and gradually assume control. On the surface, this arrangement appears to be a pragmatic solution to changing security needs, but beneath the diplomatic facade, multiple agendas are at work. The NATO presence in Georgia includes Project Veals, a classified technology capable of disabling satellite imagery, which would provide any possessor with a significant intelligence advantage. The presence of this technology, though not widely known, transforms what might otherwise be a routine transition into a high-stakes intelligence operation. Attack itself begins as Gunnery Sergeant Dylan Murphy and his squad, Tempest 1 to 2, are preparing for a briefing on the withdrawal process. Without warning, Pax Armata forces launch a coordinated assault on the NATO base, employing combined arms tactics that include infantry, armor, and air support. The precision and scale of the attack immediately suggest that this is not an opportunistic assault, but a carefully planned operation with specific objectives. The element of surprise works decisively in Pax Armata's favor, allowing them to seize key positions within the base before NATO forces can organize an effective defense. The chaos of the initial moments is captured through Murphy's perspective, as he struggles to comprehend the scale of the betrayal while responding to the immediate tactical threat to himself, and his squad mates Murphy's actions during the attack establish his character while advancing the narrative in crucial ways. As the situation deteriorates, Murphy rallies what remains of Tempest 1 to 2 and receives orders to destroy critical cybersecurity installations to prevent them from falling into Pax Armata hands. This decision acknowledges that defending the facilities has become impossible, making denial of assets to the enemy the priority. The squad's success in destroying these installations represents a tactical victory within a strategic defeat, preserving sensitive technology, but at tremendous cost. The extraction sequence that follows ends in disaster when their helicopter is shot down, leaving Murphy as the sole survivor of Tempest 1 to 2. This personal tragedy for Murphy transforms him from a bystander to the conflict into someone with a personal stake in the outcome, creating the motivation that will drive his actions throughout the remainder of the narrative. Armata's objectives in Georgia extend beyond simple territorial acquisition or military victory. Their primary target appears to be Project Veals, the satellite blinding technology housed at the base. Their failure to capture this technology during the initial attack, thanks to Murphy's actions, sets in motion their subsequent operation in Gibraltar. This establishes a pattern that will repeat throughout the narrative Pax Armata, pursuing specific technological or strategic assets, while NATO forces attempt to deny or recover those assets. The Georgia attack also serves as a demonstration of Pax Armata's capabilities and willingness to engage NATO forces directly, shattering any illusions about the organization being a typical private military corporation focused solely on profitable contracts. The scale and audacity of the assault announce Pax Armata's arrival as a peer competitor to traditional military powers, capable of planning and executing complex, combined arms operations against well-prepared opponents. Immediate aftermath of the Georgia invasion sees political consequences rapidly outstripping military ones. Just days after the attack, the NATO Secretary General is assassinated, with Pax Armata claiming responsibility. This escalation from attacking military facilities to political assassination signals Pax Armata's intention to undermine NATO at an institutional level, not merely defeat it on the battlefield. NATO's initially measured response to both the Georgia attack and the assassination proves disastrous, creating perceptions of weakness and indecision that 12 member nations seize upon as justification for withdrawing from the alliance. These withdrawals, which include nations throwing their support behind Pax Armata, fundamentally alter the global balance of power, granting the organization legitimacy and resources while diminishing NATO's reach and credibility. Political dimension of the crisis deserves particular attention, as it reveals the sophisticated strategy underlying Pax Armata's military actions. The organization understands that in modern conflict, political perception can be as important as battlefield success. By demonstrating NATO's vulnerability while simultaneously offering an alternative security framework to dissatisfied member nations, Pax Armata executes a classic divide-and-conquer strategy on a global scale. The nations that withdraw from NATO represent various motivations. Some may genuinely believe Pax Armata offers better security guarantees. Some may seek to escape American dominance within the alliance, and some may have been preemptively aligned with Pax Armata through back-channel arrangements. Whatever their individual reasons, their collective departure creates the appearance of a crumbling international order, strengthening Pax Armata's narrative of representing the future, while NATO clings to an obsolete past. Dylan Murphy, personally, the Georgia invasion becomes a defining trauma that shapes his subsequent actions and attitudes. The loss of his entire squad creates a psychological burden that he carries throughout the narrative, manifesting as both a desire for vengeance against Pax Armata and a protective instinct toward his new squad mates in Dagger 1-3. His reassignment following the attack places him in a new unit with established dynamics, forcing him to adapt while processing his recent experiences. Murphy's survival guilt becomes a recurring motif in his character development, particularly in moments when others under his command are injured or killed. The Georgia invasion transforms him from a soldier who views warfare in abstract, professional terms to one who understands its personal costs intimately, creating the emotional foundation for his eventual moral crisis when the truth about the conflict's origins emerges. Strategic implications of the Georgia invasion extend beyond the immediate military and political consequences. NATO's intelligence apparatus, already struggling to understand this new opponent, now faces the additional challenge of determining which former member nations might be sharing sensitive information with Pax Armata. The security clearance of personnel from withdrawing nations becomes an immediate concern, as does the potential compromise of NATO operational plans, technical specifications, and intelligence methodologies. This internal security crisis compounds the external military threat, forcing NATO to devote resources to counterintelligence that might otherwise be directed against Pax Armata directly. The organization's ability to exploit these internal divisions within NATO demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of intelligence warfare that matches their tactical proficiency on the battlefield. The public narrative surrounding the Georgia invasion also plays a crucial role in the developing conflict. Pax Armata's media strategy presents the attack as a justified preemption against NATO aggression, claiming falsely that the alliance was planning to violate the withdrawal agreement and maintain a covert presence in Georgia. This alternative narrative finds receptive audiences in various parts of the world, particularly among populations already skeptical of Western intentions and interventions. NATO's counter-narrative struggles to gain traction, partly because the full truth about Project Veals remains classified, limiting what officials can reveal without compromising intelligence capabilities. This information war creates a fog of propaganda that obscures ground truth, making it difficult for civilian populations and even military personnel to distinguish between fact and fabrication. The broader chronology of Battlefield 6's narrative, the Georgia invasion, establishes the pattern of operations that will characterize much of the ensuing conflict. Pax Armata identifies and pursues specific strategic assets while NATO reacts, often a step behind in understanding the larger pattern. The value of Project Veals becomes fully apparent only in retrospect, as subsequent operations reveal how the satellite blinding technology enables Pax Armata to operate with unusual freedom in various theaters. This pattern of technological pursuit repeats with NXC, the explosive nano-compound that becomes a central plot point later in the narrative. The Georgia invasion thus introduces one of the story's key themes: the increasing importance of specialized technology in modern warfare, and the strategic advantage conferred by controlling such technology finally. The Georgia invasion serves as the narrative's point of no return, the event that transforms a tense but stable international situation into an open global conflict. Prior to the attack, various diplomatic channels remained open between NATO and Pax Armata, with the withdrawal agreement suggesting at least superficial cooperation. The invasion shatters these diplomatic avenues, creating a momentum toward all-out warfare that proves difficult to arrest even when opportunities for de-escalation emerge. The personal nature of the conflict for key individuals on both sides, Murphy's loss of his squad, Kincaid's history with Carter, further complicates potential reconciliation, embedding the large-scale geopolitical struggle within intimate personal grievances. By the time the full scope of the manipulation behind the conflict is revealed, the momentum of violence has grown too powerful to easily stop, trapping all participants in a cycle of escalation that seems to have only one possible conclusion in conclusion. The Georgia invasion represents far more than just an exciting opening sequence for Battlefield 6's campaign. It establishes the central conflict, introduces key characters and their motivations, sets up major themes, and creates the geopolitical context for everything that follows. The attack's consequences ripple throughout the narrative, influencing strategic decisions, personal relationships, and the moral framework within which the characters operate. By understanding the Georgia incident in all its dimensions, military, political, psychological, and technological, we gain essential insight into the complex narrative that Battlefield 6 presents, a story that uses the framework of military science fiction to explore timeless questions about loyalty, manipulation, and the personal costs of global conflict. Section 5. Global flashpoints: Gibraltar, Cairo, and New York following the Georgia invasion. The conflict between NATO and Pax Armata expands into a global confrontation, with multiple flashpoints emerging across different continents and operational contexts. This section will examine three crucial operational theaters that define the middle act of Battlefield 6's narrative. The NATO operation to retake Gibraltar in March 2028, the attempted extraction of biometrics CEO Fayek, Selim from Cairo in June 2028, and the defense of New York against a sophisticated Pax Armata attack later that same month. Each of these operations represents a different facet of the evolving conflict, showcasing varied tactics, objectives, and political implications, while advancing the overarching narrative toward its dramatic climax. By examining these global flashpoints in detail, we can trace the escalation of the conflict and the gradual unveiling of the larger conspiracy that underpins it. Gibraltar operation in March 2028 represents NATO's first major offensive against Pax Armata since the Georgia invasion 6 months earlier. The strategic value of Gibraltar is immediately apparent, controlling the entrance to the Mediterranean Sea. The territory offers tremendous advantages for controlling maritime traffic and projecting power throughout southern Europe and North Africa. Pax Armata's occupation of Gibraltar following the NATO withdrawals has given the organization a strategic foothold in a crucial location, making its liberation a priority for NATO commanders. The operation showcases NATO's return to offensive operations after a period of regrouping and reorganization, following the initial shock of the Georgia attack and subsequent political setbacks. The planning for Gibraltar reflects lessons learned from the Georgia incident, with greater emphasis on operational security and contingency. Planning Dagger 1 to 3's role in the Gibraltar operation demonstrates the squad's specialized capabilities and establishes their importance within NATO's Special Operations framework. The mission begins with a divided approach. Master Sergeant Has Carter and Sniper Simone Gecko Espina conduct a high-altitude low-opening halo parachute insertion to neutralize coastal defense guns that threaten the approaching naval force. Meanwhile, Dylan Murphy and Cliff Lopez participate in the main amphibious assault alongside British forces. This dual approach showcases the variety of special operations techniques that Dagger 1 to 3 employs, from precision strikes to conventional infantry engagements. The successful coordination between these different elements results in the liberation of Gibraltar from Pax Armata control, marking NATO's first significant victory in the conflict, and providing a crucial morale boost after months of setbacks. Despite the operational success in Gibraltar, the mission reveals troubling aspects of the conflict that will assume greater importance as the narrative progresses. During the operation, Dagger 1-3 encounters Alexander Kincaid personally, confirming his role as Pax Armata's field commander. Kincaid's escape during the battle, while tactically insignificant in the context of retaking Gibraltar, has strategic implications, as it allows him to continue directing Pax Armata operations elsewhere. More importantly, the Gibraltar operation represents Pax Armata's second successful attempt to acquire Project Veals, the satellite blinding technology they initially failed to capture in Georgia. This success becomes apparent only in retrospect, as subsequent operations reveal Pax Armata's ability to operate with unusual freedom from satellite surveillance. The Gibraltar mission thus embodies the complex nature of the conflict. Apparent tactical victories might conceal strategic losses, and the true objectives of operations may differ from their stated purposes. Cairo operation in June 2028 shifts the narrative to a different operational environment and introduces new dimensions to the conflict. With Egypt under Pax Armata occupation, NATO intelligence identifies an opportunity to extract Fayeq Selim, a biometrics CEO who has been working with the organization, but might possess valuable intelligence about its plans. The involvement of Ibrahim al-Khatib, leader of Egyptian Army Special Forces Unit 777, adds a local partner to the operation and acknowledges the importance of regional expertise in complex environments. The urban setting of Cairo presents distinct challenges compared to the more conventional battlefield of Gibraltar, requiring different tactics and presenting unique vulnerabilities. The nighttime timing of the operation suggests an emphasis on stealth and surprise, though these advantages quickly dissipate when the mission encounters unexpected resistance. Cairo operation goes disastrously wrong almost from the beginning, with Pax Armata forces present in Selim's estate despite intelligence indicating the area was clear. This intelligence failure raises immediate questions about the reliability of NATO's information sources and suggests possible leaks or sophisticated counterintelligence by Pax Armata. The death of Selim during the extraction attempt appears to render the mission a failure, until the squad retrieves an RFID chip implanted in his thumb containing the intelligence he promised. This technological solution to an operational problem reflects one of Battlefield 6's recurring themes: the increasing importance of information technology in modern warfare, where data can be as valuable as territorial control. The intelligence extracted from Selim's chip reveals Pax Armata's planned attack on New York, shifting the narrative focus to a direct threat against American soil. Aftermath of the Cairo operation raises troubling questions about the flow of intelligence that gradually point toward the conspiracy at the heart of the narrative. The discrepancy between the intelligence provided to Dagger 1 to 3 and the actual situation they encounter suggests either catastrophic intelligence failure or deliberate manipulation. Given Melissa Mills's role as their CIA handler and her later revealed involvement with Pax Armata, the possibility emerges that the squad was deliberately sent into a compromised situation, though the motivations for such manipulation remain unclear at this point in the narrative. The Cairo operation thus serves as a crucial turning point in the squad's relationship with their command structure, planting seeds of doubt that will eventually grow into full-blown suspicion and rebellion. The personal stakes also increase during this mission, as the squad experiences the direct consequences of intelligence failures in the form of heightened risk and mission compromise. New York attack in June 2028 represents Pax Armata's most audacious operation to date, directly bringing the conflict to American soil and challenging NATO in its most powerful member nation. The setting during a NATO summit adds symbolic weight to the attack, demonstrating Pax Armata's ability to strike at the heart of the alliance despite its sophisticated security apparatus. The operation's complexity reveals the organization's sophisticated understanding of asymmetric warfare, using a combination of conventional military tactics and unconventional approaches to achieve strategic effects. The attack unfolds in multiple phases, beginning with the infiltration of a Pax Armata cell into Brooklyn, and culminating in an attempt to redirect missiles from a U.S. warship to destroy the NATO summit. 1 to 3's deployment to Brooklyn places them in the unfamiliar role of domestic counterterrorism operators, working to identify and neutralize the Pax Armata cell before it can execute its plan. The urban environment creates unique challenges, with civilian populations complicating engagement rules and the dense infrastructure providing cover for the operatives. The discovery that Pax Armata has compromised the USS Artemis, an American warship assigned to protect the city, reveals the organization's penetration of supposedly secure military systems and creates a race against time to prevent a catastrophic friendly fire incident. The armored train that serves as a mobile command center for the operation represents an innovative approach to communications and coordination, making the cell difficult to locate and neutralize. The eventual destruction of the train as it crosses the Brooklyn Bridge creates a dramatic set piece while only partially resolving the threat. New York operation culminates in two crucial back-to-back developments that significantly advance both the plot and character arcs. The first is the realization that the New York attack was merely a diversion for Pax Armata's true objective: the capture of President Fernandez. This revelation demonstrates Kincaid's strategic sophistication, using a dramatic but ultimately secondary operation to distract attention from his primary target. The subsequent attack on the presidential motorcade in Georgia The following day showcases Pax Armata's ability to project power even within the United States, employing substantial force against what should have been a secure convoy. The confrontation between Kincaid and his former comrade has Carter during this attack ends with Carter's death, a personal tragedy for Dagger 1 to 3 that transforms their motivation from professional duty to personal vengeance. Strategic implications of the New York operation and its aftermath extend beyond the immediate tactical outcomes. President Fernandez's declaration of a NATO global response force and formal war against Pax Armata represents a significant escalation in the conflict, moving from contained operations to full-scale military engagement. The attempt on the president's life galvanizes NATO members, temporarily reversing the fragmentation that followed the Georgia invasion and Secretary General's assassination. For Dagger 1 to 3 specifically, Carter's death and Murphy's subsequent promotion to squad leader creates a new dynamic within the team, forcing them to adapt to new leadership while processing their grief and anger. The New York sequence thus serves as a pivotal moment in the narrative, closing one chapter of the conflict while opening another, more intense and personal phase. Examining these three operations together reveals patterns in both Pax Armata's strategy and NATO's response that help explain the overall trajectory of the conflict. Pax Armata consistently demonstrates superior intelligence, often appearing to anticipate NATO's movements while concealing their own intentions until the last possible moment. Their operations combine conventional military capability with unconventional approaches, creating a hybrid threat that proves difficult to counter using traditional methods. NATO, meanwhile, struggles to adapt to this new type of opponent, often reacting to Pax Armata's initiatives rather than controlling the tempo of operations. The gradual revelation that this dynamic may be intentionally engineered by elements within NATO itself adds layers of complexity to what might otherwise appear to be a conventional conflict between clearly defined opponents. In conclusion, the global flashpoints at Gibraltar, Cairo, and New York represent crucial waypoints in Battlefield 6's narrative, advancing the plot while developing characters and themes. Each operation showcases different aspects of modern conflict, from conventional combined arms warfare to urban special operations to domestic counterterrorism. The progression from Gibraltar to New York traces an escalation in both the scale of operations and their personal impact on the members of Dagger 1 to 3, particularly with the death of Has Carter. The sequence also gradually unveils the larger conspiracy behind the conflict, moving from vague suspicions to concrete evidence of manipulation, as the squad experiences repeated intelligence failures and discrepancies. By understanding these operations in detail, we gain essential insight into the complex narrative structure of Battlefield 6 and the sophisticated portrayal of modern warfare that it presents. Section 6. The unraveling, conspiracy, and institutional betrayal As Battlefield 6's narrative progresses beyond the New York attack and President Fernandez's formal declaration of war against Pax Armata, the focus gradually shifts from external conflict to internal revelation. The middle acts of the story plant seeds of doubt about the official narrative of the war, while the final acts bring those doubts to fruition through a series of shocking disclosures that transform our understanding of everything that has preceded them. This section will trace the unraveling of the conspiracy at the heart of the narrative, examining how Dagger 1 to 3 gradually uncovers the truth about Pax Armata's origins and the institutional betrayal that has manipulated the conflict from its inception. This journey from ignorance to awareness to action forms the moral and philosophical core of Battlefield 6's story, elevating it beyond a simple military thriller into a more complex exploration of trust, manipulation, and moral responsibility in an increasingly ambiguous world. First inklings of institutional deception appear early in the narrative, though their significance becomes clear only in retrospect. During the Georgia invasion, the scale and coordination of Pax Armata's attack suggests inside knowledge of NATO procedures and vulnerabilities. In Gibraltar, the ease with which Pax Armata acquires Project Veals raises questions about security protocols that should have protected such sensitive technology. But the most telling indications emerge during the Cairo operation, where the intelligence provided to Dagger 1 to 3 proves catastrophically inaccurate, resulting in Fayek Selim's death and nearly costing the squad their lives. These operational discrepancies might be dismissed as routine intelligence failures in the fog of war, but their frequency and specificity gradually suggest a more troubling pattern. The squad's growing suspicion mirrors the player's own dawning awareness that the apparent reality of the conflict may be carefully constructed to conceal more complex truths. Melissa Mills's role as the squad's CIA handler becomes increasingly ambiguous as these discrepancies accumulate. Her explanations for intelligence failures grow more perfunctory, and her operational priorities sometimes seem misaligned with the squad's immediate tactical needs. During the New York operation, her focus on the broader strategic picture occasionally appears to disregard the squad's safety, though such trade-offs are inherent in military command structures. The turning point comes after President Fernandez's motorcade is attacked, when Mills's response to Carter's death seems curiously detached, focusing on operational continuity rather than acknowledging the personal loss the squad has experienced. These behavioral nuances, easily missed in isolation, collectively paint a portrait of someone whose loyalties and motivations extend beyond her official role as support for frontline operators. Incorporation of Lucas Hemlock into Dagger 1 to 3 following Carter's death accelerates the unraveling process. As a CIA operative rather than a Marine, Hemlock brings a different perspective and skill set to the squad, along with connections to the intelligence community that the others lack. His immediate execution of Alexander Kincaid during their confrontation in Tajikistan, while justifiable as self-defense, also eliminates a crucial source of information about Pax Armata's command structure. Hemlock's subsequent encouragement for the squad to infiltrate Mills's home after being cut off from command suggests either remarkable initiative or the execution of a pre-existing agenda. His role throughout the final acts positions him as a catalyst for the story's revelations, though his ultimate motivations remain somewhat ambiguous, leaving open the question of whether he represents institutional self-correction or merely a different faction within the intelligence community. Tajikistan operation in September 2028 serves as the narrative's dramatic climax and the setting for its most significant revelations. As NATO prepares for a full-scale assault on Pax Armata's primary base, Dagger 1-3 is assigned to eliminate air defenses near a crucial dam, clearing the way for the main offensive. The operation's scope and resources indicate its importance to NATO's strategy, representing a decisive effort to eliminate Pax Armata as a coherent fighting force. The setting in Tajikistan places the conflict in a remote, strategically significant location that has often served as a flashpoint in real-world geopolitical competition, grounding the narrative in plausible geopolitical dynamics even as it ventures into conspiracy thriller territory. The destruction of the dam during the operation creates a dramatic set piece while serving tactical purposes. Though the environmental and human consequences of such an action receive little attention in the narrative's focus on military necessity. Confrontation with Alexander Kincaid in his bunker represents the culmination of the squad's hunt for the man responsible for so much of their suffering, particularly Murphy's loss of his original squad and Carter's death. But rather than providing simple closure, this encounter transforms their understanding of the conflict entirely. Kincaid's revelation that Pax Armata was created by the CIA, with Melissa Mills's direct involvement, as a controlled opposition force to unite NATO members, represents the narrative's central twist. His claim that he was originally Mills's asset inside the organization, intended to help manage the threat, but eventually went rogue or developed his own agenda, complicates the moral landscape considerably. In this telling, the entire conflict emerges as a manufactured crisis that escaped its creator's control, with real people dying to serve a cynical geopolitical strategy. Mills's attempt to eliminate Dagger 1-3 following this revelation, by calling in an airstrike on Kincaid's bunker while the squad is still inside, confirms their worst suspicions about her loyalties. This decision transforms her from a questionable ally into an active antagonist, willing to sacrifice the squad to contain the damaging truth that Kincaid has revealed. The squad's narrow escape from the bunker before the airstrike hits creates both a dramatic action sequence and a symbolic rebirth, having physically survived the explosion. they now emerge with a new understanding of their situation that fundamentally alters their relationship to the institutions they serve. Their decision to pursue Mills rather than returning to official channels demonstrates their understanding that the corruption they've uncovered may extend beyond a single individual, making conventional reporting mechanisms unreliable. Infiltration of Mills's home in McLean, Virginia, 3 days later represents the narrative's final act and its philosophical core. The domestic setting creates a stark contrast with the global battlefields that have dominated the story until this point, emphasizing the intrusion of the conflict into the most personal spaces. The squad's interrogation of Mills forces a complete accounting of the conspiracy, connecting the various operations and revealing the underlying logic behind what previously appeared as disconnected events. Mills's explanation presents a coherent, if horrifying, rationale for her actions. The belief that without a unifying threat, NATO would fragment, potentially leading to a more dangerous global situation than a managed conflict with a controlled opponent. This articulation of realpolitik reasoning taken to its extreme provides intellectual context for actions that might otherwise appear simply monstrous. Specifics that Mills reveals during the interrogation fill in crucial gaps in the narrative, creating a complete picture of the manipulation that has driven the conflict. She confirms that Pax Armata attacked the NATO base in Georgia specifically to acquire Project Veals, explaining the organization's subsequent ability to operate without satellite surveillance. She acknowledges that the operation in Gibraltar represented their second, successful attempt to acquire the technology. She admits that she and Selim were working together to supply Pax Armata with both NXC and intelligence, including the information that enabled the Brooklyn attack. Most significantly, she validates Kincaid's claim that he was originally her asset within Pax Armata, intended to help manage the organization until he developed his own agenda, and the situation spiraled out of control. This complete accounting provides narrative closure while raising troubling questions about accountability and moral responsibility. Arrival of a Pax Armata team to extract or eliminate Mills during the interrogation introduces a final action sequence while reinforcing the theme of blurred loyalties. The fact that Pax Armata operatives are operating on American soil, targeting a CIA officer at her private residence, demonstrates the organization's continued capability despite the Tajikistan operation. The squad's defense of Mills against this team creates a complex moral situation. Protecting someone they know to be responsible for countless deaths, including their former squad leader, because she possesses information they need, or because their professional instincts to protect a fellow service member override their personal feelings. This tension between professional duty and moral outrage represents one of the narrative's key philosophical concerns, exploring how individuals navigate situations where institutional obligations conflict with personal ethics. Murphy's execution of Mills, following the firefight, represents the narrative's final moral judgment on her actions and the philosophy they represent. Acting under orders from their new, anonymous handler, possibly Hemlock, or someone connected to him, Murphy eliminates the person most directly responsible for orchestrating the conflict. This moment completes Murphy's character arc from a soldier who follows orders without question to one who makes his own moral decisions, even when those decisions violate military protocol and legal norms. The execution suggests that some transgressions exist beyond the capacity of conventional justice systems to address, requiring extra-legal solutions. This resolution, while emotionally satisfying in a narrative sense, raises uncomfortable questions about due process and the rule of law, particularly given that Mills's revelations about wider CIA involvement suggest she may not have been acting alone or without authorization. Broader implications of the conspiracy extend beyond the immediate narrative to comment on real-world concerns about transparency, accountability, and the moral compromises made in the name of national security. Battlefield 6's narrative engages with the ongoing tension between security and liberty, between the need for secret operations to protect national interests and the democratic requirement for transparency and oversight. The conspiracy it portrays represents an extreme version of legitimate security practices, where the need for plausible deniability and compartmentalized intelligence creates conditions where manipulation can occur without effective accountability. The narrative suggests that when institutions operate without meaningful oversight, even well-intentioned actions can produce catastrophic consequences. And the tools created to protect security can ultimately become threats to that security in conclusion. The unraveling of the conspiracy in Battlefield 6's narrative transforms a straightforward military conflict into a complex exploration of institutional betrayal and moral responsibility. The journey from suspicious to revelation to action traces the squad's growing awareness of the gap between official narratives and operational realities, culminating in their decision to operate outside established channels to expose the truth. The conspiracy they uncover reflects timeless concerns about power without accountability, while their response raises questions about the proper balance between institutional loyalty and personal ethics. By examining this dimension of the narrative in detail, we gain appreciation for Battlefield 6's ambition in using military science fiction not merely to entertain, but to explore significant questions about the nature of modern conflict, the moral compromises of security institutions, and the individual's responsibility in situations where lawful authority has been corrupted. Section 7. The final confrontation, Tajikistan and its aftermath. The Tajikistan operation represents the climactic military engagement in Battlefield 6's narrative, the point at which the various plot threads converge, and the conflict between NATO and Pax Armata reaches its violent culmination. This section will provide a comprehensive examination of the Tajikistan sequence. From the preliminary operations through the main assault to the shocking revelations that transform the squad's understanding of their mission. We will analyze the tactical progression of the operation, the key revelations that emerged during its execution, and the immediate consequences that set the stage for the narrative's final resolution. The Tajikistan sequence serves as both a satisfying action set piece and the narrative's philosophical turning point, where the true nature of the conflict becomes impossible to ignore, and the squad must make decisions that will define their characters long after the shooting stops. Strategic context for the Tajikistan operation emerges from President Fernandez's formal declaration of war against Pax Armata following the attempt on his life. This declaration transforms the conflict from a series of contained operations into a full-scale military engagement, with NATO committing substantial resources to eliminate Pax Armata as a coherent fighting force. Intelligence identifies Tajikistan as the location of Pax Armata's primary command and control facility, making it the logical target for a decisive offensive. The presence of hypersonic missiles armed with NXC, the explosive nano-compound introduced earlier in the narrative, creates additional urgency to the operation, as these weapons represent a strategic threat that cannot be allowed to remain in Pax Armata's possession. The stage is thus set for a conventional military assault, unlike any previously seen in the campaign, with NATO employing combined arms on a scale that reflects the operation's importance. Dagger 1 to 3's role in the initial phase of the operation demonstrates their continued value as a special operations asset, despite the loss of Carter and Murphy's relative inexperience as squad leader. Their mission to neutralize air defenses near a crucial dam serves the larger offensive by clearing the approach for NATO air power. A classic special forces task that leverages their precision and mobility. The inclusion of Lucas Hemlock as a replacement for Carter introduces new dynamics to the squad. With his CIA background and different operational style, creating both friction and complementary capabilities. The destruction of the dam during this phase creates a dramatic environmental set piece while serving tactical purposes, though the narrative acknowledges the destructive consequences of such actions only indirectly. This preliminary operation succeeds in its military objectives, though at the cost of alerting Pax Armata to the impending main assault. Main NATO assault on Pax Armata's Tajikistan base represents the largest combined arms operation depicted in the campaign, with infantry, armor, and air assets operating in coordination against a well-prepared defensive position. The scale of the engagement returns to Battlefield's roots in portraying all-out warfare, with the player participating as part of a larger military effort rather than operating in the small-unit tactical engagements that characterize much of the campaign. This shift in scale emphasizes the narrative's progression from isolated incidents to open warfare, reflecting the political escalation that has occurred since President Fernandez's declaration. The operation's initial success demonstrates NATO's conventional military superiority when operating on its own terms, though the subsequent revelations will complicate this apparent victory. 1-3's penetration of the Pax Armata command bunker represents the narrative's climax, the point toward which many of the preceding events have been building. The bunker environment creates a claustrophobic, intense setting for the confrontation with Kincaid, contrasting with the large-scale exterior combat. The squad's discovery that most of the hypersonic missiles have been disarmed before they can secure them suggests that other actors are operating ahead of them, though the meaning of this discovery becomes clear only later. The confrontation with Kincaid himself occurs in a controlled, almost theatrical setting, as if he has been awaiting their arrival and has prepared for this conversation. This staging emphasizes the importance of the information he possesses, transforming what might have been a simple military objective into a moment of profound revelation. Kincaid's disclosure to Dagger 1-3 represents the narrative's central turning point, the moment that transforms our understanding of everything that has preceded it. His claim that Pax Armata was created by the CIA, with Melissa Mills's direct involvement, as a controlled opposition force designed to unite NATO members, provides a coherent explanation for many of the narrative's earlier anomalies. His additional revelation that he was originally Mills's asset within the organization, intended to help manage the threat, but eventually developing his own agenda, adds personal dimension to the institutional betrayal. This disclosure recasts the entire conflict from a straightforward confrontation between NATO and an external threat to a manipulated crisis that has escaped its creator's control, with real people dying to serve a cynical geopolitical strategy. The squad's reaction mixes disbelief with dawning recognition as pieces of the puzzle begin to fall into place. Timing and manner of Kincaid's death prevent full verification of his claims in the moment, though subsequent events will confirm their essential accuracy. His movement toward a weapon provides the pretext for Hemlock to shoot him, an action justifiable as self-defense, but which also eliminates a crucial witness who could provide additional details about the conspiracy. Kincaid's dying confirmation that Mills was his handler adds credibility to his claims, coming when he has nothing obvious to gain from deception. Mills's immediate response to this disclosure, cutting off communication with the squad and calling in an airstrike on the bunker while they are still inside, effectively confirms the truth of Kincaid's revelations, transforming her from a questionable ally to an active antagonist willing to sacrifice them to contain the damaging truth. This sequence of events creates a dramatic reversal that propels the narrative toward its final resolution. The squad's escape from the bunker before the airstrike hits creates a thrilling action sequence while symbolizing their rebirth with new understanding. Their emergence into the ongoing larger battle represents a transition from the confined truth of the bunker to the complicated reality of the outside world, where the institutional structures they have served are simultaneously necessary for immediate survival and compromised by the betrayal they have uncovered. Their decision to extract rather than rejoin the main NATO force demonstrates their understanding that they cannot trust the official command structure until they better understand the scope of the conspiracy. This moment represents a crucial transition in their identity, from soldiers operating within an institutional framework to individuals who must make their own moral judgments outside that framework. Immediate aftermath of the Tajikistan operation sees the squad physically safe, but institutionally adrift, cut off from their command structure and processing the shocking revelations they have encountered. Their communication with Mills has been terminated, and attempting to report through normal channels would likely result in their isolation or elimination as loose ends. Hemlock's role becomes increasingly important during this period, as his intelligence connections provide alternative channels and resources that allow the squad to continue operating. His encouragement for them to infiltrate Mills's home suggests either personal initiative or coordination with other elements within the intelligence community, who are aware of the conspiracy and seek to expose or manage it. This transition period sets the stage for the narrative's final resolution, establishing the stakes and constraints within which the squad must operate. Strategic outcome of the Tajikistan operation presents a complex picture of success and failure from NATO's perspective. Militarily, the operation has significantly degraded Pax Armata's capabilities, destroying their primary command facility and eliminating much of their leadership, including Kincaid. The organization continues to exist, but as a diminished threat that will require reorganization before it can mount large-scale operations again. Politically, however, the operation has uncovered a conspiracy that threatens to shatter NATO from within if revealed, potentially creating more damage than Pax Armata could ever have inflicted militarily. This tension between military success and political vulnerability creates the central dilemma for the squad as they consider how to respond to what they have learned. Whether to expose the truth and risk destroying the alliance they have fought to protect, or to remain silent and allow the corruption to continue. Tajikistan's sequence also completes several character arcs while establishing new directions for others. For Murphy, the operation represents his final transformation from a follower to a leader, making crucial decisions under extreme pressure while processing information that challenges his fundamental assumptions about his mission and the institutions he serves. For Gecko and Lopez, the revelations confirm suspicions that have been growing throughout the campaign, validating their unease with certain aspects of their operations despite their professional commitment to completing their missions. For Hemlock, the operation establishes his role as either a reformer within the intelligence community or a representative of a different faction with its own agenda. For Mills, the sequence completes her transformation from support figure to antagonist, though her subsequent actions will reveal additional dimensions to her character in conclusion. The Tajikistan operation and its immediate aftermath represent the narrative climax of Battlefield 6, the point at which the various plot threads converge and the true nature of the conflict is revealed. The sequence successfully combines large-scale military action with intimate personal drama, using the setting of a decisive battle as the backdrop for revelations that transform the squad's understanding of their mission and the institutions they serve. The operation's mixed outcome military success, coupled with political and moral crisis, reflects the complicated nature of modern warfare, where victory on the battlefield does not necessarily translate to strategic advantage, and where the most dangerous threats may come from within rather than without. By examining this crucial sequence in detail, we gain appreciation for Battlefield 6's narrative ambition in using military science fiction to explore significant questions about institutional trust, moral responsibility, and the complicated relationship between truth and security in times of conflict. Section 8. Truth and consequences. The aftermath and implications. The final section of Battlefield 6's narrative moves beyond the military conflict to explore the consequences of the truths uncovered in Tajikistan. Examining how Dagger 1-3 processes these revelations and determines their appropriate response. This section will analyze the story's concluding sequences, from the infiltration of Melissa Mills's home through the final confrontation, and its implications for both the characters and the game's fictional world. We will examine the moral and philosophical questions raised by the squad's actions, consider the potential future directions for the narrative, and reflect on the broader themes that Battlefield 6 explores through its story of institutional betrayal and personal responsibility. The conclusion of the narrative provides both resolution and ambiguity, answering immediate questions while leaving larger philosophical concerns open for player reflection. Decision to infiltrate Mills's home in McLean, Virginia, represents a fundamental shift in the squad's relationship with the institutions they serve. By operating against a senior CIA officer on American soil without official authorization, they cross a line from military operatives to something closer to vigilantes, acting on their own moral authority rather than within a chain of command. The domestic setting creates a stark contrast with the global battlefields that have dominated the narrative, emphasizing the intrusion of the conflict into the most personal spaces, and suggesting that the corruption they face cannot be contained to distant combat zones. The squad's ability to penetrate Mills's security suggests either careful planning or assistance from elements within the intelligence community, possibly through Hemlock's connections. This operation represents the narrative's final transition from external conflict to internal confrontation, as the squad moves from fighting an acknowledged enemy to confronting the corruption within their own system. Interrogation of Mills provides the narrative's final exposition, connecting the various operations and revealing the underlying logic behind what previously appeared as disconnected events. Mills's explanation presents a coherent, if horrifying, rationale for her actions. The belief that without a unifying threat, NATO would fragment, potentially leading to a more dangerous global situation than a managed conflict with a controlled opponent. This articulation of realpolitik reasoning taken to its extreme provides intellectual context for actions that might otherwise appear simply monstrous. Mills embodies the danger of strategic thinking completely divorced from moral considerations, where human lives become abstract variables in a geopolitical equation, rather than individuals with inherent worth and dignity. Her calm demeanor during the interrogation suggests either genuine belief in her actions or psychological compartmentalization that prevents her from confronting their human consequences. Specific connections that Mills reveals complete our understanding of the narrative's events, creating a comprehensive picture of the manipulation that has driven the conflict. Her confirmation that Pax Armata attacked the NATO base in Georgia specifically to acquire Project Veals explains the organization's subsequent ability to operate without satellite surveillance in various theaters. Her acknowledgement that the operation in Gibraltar represented their second successful attempt to acquire the technology demonstrates the persistent pursuit of this strategic advantage. Her admission that she and Fayek Selim were working together to supply Pax Armata with both NXC and intelligence, including the information that enabled the Brooklyn attack, reveals the depth of her involvement in operations that resulted in numerous deaths. This complete accounting provides narrative closure while raising troubling questions about how such extensive manipulation could occur within organizations, presumably designed to prevent exactly this kind of rogue operation. The arrival of a Pax Armata team during the interrogation introduces a final action sequence while reinforcing the theme of blurred loyalties and complicated motivations. The fact that Pax Armata operatives are operating on American soil, targeting a CIA officer at her private residence, demonstrates the organization's continued capability despite the Tajikistan operation. Their objective remains ambiguous, whether they intend to extract Mills as someone with continued value to the organization or eliminate her as a loose end. The squad's defense of Mills against this team creates a complex moral situation, protecting someone they know to be responsible for countless deaths because she possesses information they need, or because their professional instincts override their personal feelings. This tension between professional duty and moral outrage represents one of the narrative's key philosophical concerns, exploring how individuals navigate situations where multiple ethical frameworks provide conflicting guidance. Murphy's execution of Mills, following the firefight, represents the narrative's final moral judgment on her actions and the philosophy they represent. Acting under orders from their new, anonymous handler, possibly Hemlock, or someone connected to him, Murphy eliminates the person most directly responsible for orchestrating the conflict. This moment completes Murphy's character arc from a soldier who follows orders without question to one who makes his own moral decisions, even when those decisions violate military protocol and legal norms. The execution suggests that some transgressions exist beyond the capacity of conventional justice systems to address, requiring extralegal solutions. This resolution, while emotionally satisfying in a narrative sense, raises uncomfortable questions about due process and the rule of law, particularly given that Mills's revelations about wider CIA involvement suggest she may not have been acting alone or without authorization. Anonymous handler who gives the order for Mills's execution represents the continuing ambiguity of the narrative's resolution. This figure, possibly Lucas Hemlock or someone connected to him, suggests that elements within the intelligence community are aware of the conspiracy and are working to manage its exposure. The handler's decision to eliminate Mills rather than bringing her into whatever reformed system might emerge indicates either practical necessity or a continuation of the same extra-legal approaches that created the crisis initially. This ambiguity prevents the narrative from descending into simplistic moralizing, instead presenting a world where solutions are necessarily imperfect, and where combating corruption may require compromising the very principles that distinguish the defenders from the corrupt. This philosophical complexity elevates Battlefield 6's narrative above many military shooters, acknowledging the moral gray areas that characterize real-world security dilemmas. Final moments of the campaign, with Dagger 1 to 3 departing Mills's home after her execution, provide limited resolution while emphasizing the ongoing nature of their situation. Gecko's statement that the worst is still to come acknowledges that their actions have addressed symptoms rather than curing the underlying disease of institutional corruption. The elimination of Mills and Kincaid has removed key players in the immediate crisis, but the systemic conditions that enabled their actions remain unaddressed. The squad's future status remains ambiguous, whether they will be reintegrated into the official command structure, continue operating as deniable assets for whatever faction the anonymous handler represents, or face consequences for their extra-legal actions. This open-ended conclusion creates narrative space for potential sequels, while reflecting the reality that real-world conflicts rarely conclude with neat resolutions. Broader implications of the narrative's events extend beyond the immediate story to comment on contemporary concerns about government transparency, security institutions, and the moral compromises made in the name of national security. Battlefield 6 engages with ongoing tensions between security and liberty, between the need for secret operations to protect national interests and the democratic requirement for transparency and oversight. The conspiracy it portrays represents an extreme version of legitimate security practices, where the need for plausible deniability and compartmentalized intelligence creates conditions where manipulation can occur without effective accountability. The narrative suggests that when institutions operate without meaningful oversight, even well-intentioned actions can produce catastrophic consequences. and the tools created to protect security can ultimately become threats to that security. Personal consequences for the members of Dagger 1 to 3 remain largely unexplored in the narrative's conclusion. Though we can speculate based on their character development throughout the campaign. Murphy has transformed from a conventional soldier to someone who has made the ultimate moral decision outside the framework of military law, an experience that will likely haunt him regardless of its necessity. Gecko's observational skills and strategic thinking position her as a potential leader, though her comment about the worst still to come suggests she understands the limitations of their victory. Lopez's humanitarian values have been repeatedly challenged by the realities of a conflict where conventional moral frameworks seem inadequate, potentially causing lasting psychological impact. Their shared experience of institutional betrayal creates bonds that may surpass their official military affiliations, potentially leading them to continue operating as a team outside traditional structures. In conclusion, Battlefield 6's narrative uses the framework of military science fiction to explore significant questions about power, accountability, and moral responsibility in an increasingly complex world. The story moves beyond simple conflict between clearly defined opponents to present a more nuanced portrayal where institutional loyalties conflict with personal ethics, where victories on the battlefield may conceal strategic defeats, and where the most dangerous threats can emerge from within rather than without. The narrative's resolution provides satisfying closure to the immediate plot, while acknowledging the ongoing nature of the philosophical questions it raises. By examining the aftermath and implications of the story's events in detail, we gain appreciation for Battlefield 6's ambition in using interactive entertainment to engage with themes that extend beyond the game itself to reflect broader concerns about the world we inhabit today. You for joining me on this comprehensive journey through the lore of Battlefield 6. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the game's narrative and would like to hear more explorations of video game stories in this relaxed, detailed style, please consider subscribing to Long Stories to Sleep To and liking this video. Your support helps us continue creating the thorough, immersive content that helps you relax while expanding your understanding of the games you love. Until next time, pleasant dreams and thoughtful reflections on the stories that shape our virtual worlds.